Hey Music 309, this is Kenya Montalvan, and I did my essay on gospel blues. This essay displays how gospel blues influenced much of contemporary music and how the origin played a key role in development. Gospel blues was introduced at a critical time in history, which made it difficult to revolutionize society. It was a brand new genre that integrated two distinct and completely different music genres into one. However, what makes gospel blues distinct from other genres would be the musicians themselves. Two famous musicians, also known as the mother and father of gospel blues, paved the way for other African Americans to express themselves freely. This essay represents how sacred this music is to African Americans. Gospel music consists of many talented musicians. However, there are unique individuals that helped gospel blues grow. Gospel music originated in the 1800s in style of short hymns. These hymns were often sung out in the fields by slaves or in the southern churches. These songs consisted of hand clapping, foot stomping, call and response, and complex rhythms. The churches also consisted of their very own choir. It wasn't until the 1930s that Thomas Dorsey redeveloped gospel music into a genre known as gospel blues. The music shifted and incorporated into blues and jazz with traditional gospel music. Initially, this genre of music was rejected repeatedly, but over time, this genre became established as the traditional gospel music genre. Thomas Dorsey, who became known as the father of gospel music, restyled this genre in the 1930s. He was a very famous jazz pianist in Chicago who played with other famous musicians like Hudson Tamm or Red Whitaker. He created the new genre known as gospel blues. Dorsey's most famous song was Precious Lord, Take My Hand. This song was composed after his first wife and child passed away. Sources say he often contemplated suicide, but instead decided to devote his time and passion into gospel music. Therefore, he created and established his own first black gospel publishing company, Dorsey's House of Music, in 1932. He created this company to allow African American composers to create their music. African Americans suffered from discrimination, which hindered their possibilities of creating new music. This foundation still exists today and continues to grow through this legacy. His legacy opened up many doors for a broad spectrum of musicians. She had the privilege to sing with famous composers Duke Ellington and Thomas Dorsey. But most importantly, she had the honor to sing at the 1963 March on Washington at the request of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Jackson lived in a very strict religious home, which limited her to experience life like a normal teenager. Upon moving to Chicago at the age of 17, she met Thomas Dorsey, who became her mentor. Together, they were able to spread this musical genre across different regions. Jackson never let go of her jazz blues tune, but instead incorporated it into her gospel music. She understood that most churches would not accept this genre. However, she held an acute understanding of how the rhythms of slavery continued to echo across musical genres and inform contemporary musical expressions. Her first song ever recorded was God Gonna Separate the Wheat from the Tares, which started her successful singing career. Her legacy continues to shine and is sacred to many African American musicians. I interviewed Damian Gordon, who is currently a member of the gospel choir at Livingstone Cathedral of Worship. He has been singing with this church for over 5 years now and wishes to continue. I started this interview by asking him what had brought his attention to this genre of music. He explained to me that attending church was mandatory growing up. Although I always had to wake up early every Sunday morning, I always looked forward to the music. He further explained that these songs were not just songs, but a sacred connection with God. Sometimes it felt as if His presence was there. I felt at peace. Growing up, he was introduced to many different instruments like the guitar, organ, piano, saxophone, and violin. However, the instrument he loved playing the most was the piano. He fell in love with this instrument because the piano is limitless. You can create so many different pieces and it will still sound so beautiful. It takes a really long time to perfect a piece, but each time you practice, you can just improve more and more. He has visited many different conventions like the 2017 International Interfaith Gospel Music Conference. He has also had the privilege to play for different churches as a guest singer like Calvary Baptist Tabernacle. He stated that these different opportunities helped him grow as a person and helped his spiritual connection grow too. He is very excited to see where his talent can take him. There are many themes in gospel blues. However, there are two important ones that help create the development. First, cultural identity played a key part in the development of this music. Gospel music and blues music both originated in the South. Although the genres were completely polar opposites, they assembled smoothly. Gospel music was recognized as godly music, whereas blues was portrayed as devil music. However, both genres were composed by the same group of people, African Americans. When composing new music for these two specific genres, musicians often felt that their culture was not being portrayed. They believed that most of the musicians were adapting to the European style. Second, viewing gospel blues in a historical and analytical approach. As stated before, gospel blues has a rich history. Blues music is considered to be an African American identity. Both genres of the music were created by slaves. These songs created their identity that made them different from every other individual. It is no doubt that without the blues genre, there would be no music at all. The blues encompasses a broad range of forms and styles that reflect the cultural heritage and diverse interests of Black artists and musicians. This genre embodies the tradition of African Americans to be expressed in different songs. When they integrated both genres, they were able to express their faith much more freely. They created a change in the system and shifted from the European style of music to their very own. Their identity did not disappear like most thought, but influenced other genres of music to develop. In conclusion, I have learned that gospel blues made a great impact in the music industry. I learned how rich this culture is and how important this genre of music is to African Americans. Before conducting my research, I theorized that gospel blues was a great influencer in today's music. After conducting research, I learned that gospel blues is actually the roots of different music genres. It influenced many artists to step out of the European style of music and play music that they loved. I learned that people like Thomas Dorsey and Mahalia Jackson were highly respected in the African American community, but also in the music industry too. They were able to receive the honor of being called father and mother of gospel music because they took the chance to be the change. Gospel blues is a great contribution to the music world and will continue to be a foundation for future music.